Hold on a moment. How did we end up in this situation? Well, this is 9/11, one of the worst American tragedies to date. There are many reasons why this is the case, and after a long while of research me and my partner have done, we have come to a conclusion. All of these issues could be traced back to communication. This is a bold claim, but I guarantee you, after you watch this video, you will be as convinced as me and my partner are. However, before we dive into that, we need a little more background on these famous Twin Towers. So I'm going to let my aforementioned partner take over for me.
So, back in 1959, a businessman by the name of John D. Rockefeller came up with this idea for a place where world economies can meet and barter, or a World Trade Center. This place would later become the Twin Towers. To build the two metal monstrosities, there was a lot of digging necessary. In fact, to create just the base needed for the Twin Towers, they had to make a river to wash out the dirt that was piling up. These bases were huge pits. They must be. The Twin Towers were the largest skyscrapers ever built in New York at the time. Now, the Twin Towers were not used by just one company, but many at once. As they were huge buildings, thousands of workers from many different companies did business there. It's had so many people working there that there was even a preschool for the kids of the people working there. But 9/11 was not the first attempt on the Twin Towers. On February 26, 1993, the Northern Tower parking garage was attacked by a car bomb. It sadly ended the lives of 6 people. There was a memorial fountain outside the Twin Towers with the names of the deceased. Of course, today there are 2 fountains where they once stood, marking the names of the 2,000 people that died in the tragedy that was 9/11.
But that's not the topic we came here to talk about. We are here to talk about 9/11, along with the mishaps and successes of communication. Which, spoilers, there is much of the former. Let's start off with the bad. First, during the time of 9/11, security was much less tight. Security was not trained as well as they are today, allowing the bombers to sneak by fairly easily. Along with that, firefighters and policemen had different radio signals, causing citizens to get mixed signals from both sides. This just added on to the fear and confusion because citizens didn't know who to listen to. The lack of communication between both sides also made it so neither side really knew what the other was doing. And finally, to add a cherry on top to the mess, they couldn't decide whether people should stay put or evacuate. In the end, they decided that staying put would be the safest. It was a very rushed decision, and the first responders couldn't really think about considering there were buildings exploding. The decision ended up being the worst of the 2 options because the buildings both collapsed, instantly killing everyone near or in the buildings. This was certainly the worst American tragedy to date, and this all led to the 9/11 we remember. Though 9/11 was a tragedy, there are a few beneficial things to come out of 9/11. First of all, a beneficial thing to come out of 9/11 is the airport security that allowed these terrorists to enter the plane was made much stronger. This way, future attacks wouldn't be as easy for the terrorists to pull off correctly. Thanks to modern security, smuggling items through TSA is much more difficult to pull off. Another thing that benefited us and came out of 9/11 was the fact the nation bonded over losing loved ones in 9/11. This fact allowed us to have patriotism never seen before. It was so high that everyone in our nation decided to make a holiday of 9/11, known as Patriots Day. The aftershock of 9/11 left many scars. People still go to the fountains to mourn their lost ones. There is a tree that survived the September 11 terrorist attacks. The tree was found at Ground Zero, It was then placed in the care of the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. After it was restored, it was placed back and resides currently outside of the memorial fountains. People who were trapped by the fires decided they would take the faster and painless death. By jumping from their offices, firefighters claim to have heard the bodies hitting the ground. Some have trauma, claiming that they will never forget the sound of bodies splatting against the pavement. Speaking of which, we have a firefighter here from the scene of 9/11.
I'm Clarence Singleton, and I'm a 9/11 survivor. It's not easy being a firefighter. It's some grueling, tough work. I retired from the New York City Fire Department August 30th of 2000. On the morning of September 11, 2001, I heard that a plane struck the tower. I didn't think anything of it until I heard a second announcement.
There were many people in the building.
Another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over my building, and there's been another collision. Can you see it? I can see it on the shot.
I donned a fire department t-shirt, a pair of boots to go over to the scene. One of my sons called, and he was begging me, "Daddy, don't go, you're retired." But I still had this pull. I just felt compelled to go. When I got to the scene, it was like a ghost town. The ground was covered with debris. There was ladies' purses, shoes, clothing, you name it. It was on the ground, and there was this thick layer of dust. As I was going into the area, I met the police commissioner, fire commissioner, their little entourage. They were covered in dust, and they were leaving the scene. My inner voice told me, "Clarence, stay here and work with these guys." I stayed working with them. We were extinguishing fires around the perimeter of the building.
Well, this is the worst I've ever seen.
As we were working right here, it doesn't seem as if the tower was that far away on September 11, I guess because it was so tall. We heard this loud bang like something let go, and we didn't look up. We stared at each other. We heard it again. Bang, really loud bang.
The other tower of the World Trade Center has just collapsed. You are looking at live pictures of the second twin tower at the World Trade Center collapsing.
We bolted, we ran, moving so fast. I was on the ground. I was skidding along because I knew I was in a collapse zone.
Now, this might have all been preventable if someone thought about the fact that the jet's engine's heat would have the ability to melt the steel cables that are used as the base of the twin towers. If these metal poles were melted, which they were, that would make it so the towers could collapse at any moment without warning. Now, I believe if there was communication between firefighters and the contractors that had seen the build plans, which there had to have been at least one they could reach out to, they might have come to the conclusion that the buildings were going to collapse and they needed to evacuate those buildings. Another thing that was preventable with better communication was the fact they knew there were anti-American people in flight school, and they did nothing about it. They didn't tell anyone, they didn't put up a warning, they did zilch. Even putting them on a no-fly list would have stopped 9/11 from ever happening. The fact of the matter is that 9/11 would have been preventable had there been better communication. Like it was said previously, the communication during 9/11 gave a lot of the metaphorical flames of the problem to be given a second wind. The lack of communication gave fuel to these fires. I and my partner do honestly believe that 9/11's flames might have burned a lot less bright if we had superior communication during the crisis.
Everybody go straight. This ambulance is about 100 feet ahead.